When you have to shoot, shoot, don't talk.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Trap House podcast. My name's Justin Jett. This is episode 20 with Matt Bredeweg. He's a local trapper here in the Hoosier state. And Charlie and I have been on a little Muskrat Marsh trapping trip, kayak style, in a 10,000-acre marsh. And it's nearby where Matt lives, so Matt's kind of been our hub to store things. And if anything goes wrong, he's the guy we can lean on, and we really appreciate that. And you'll see in the podcast, Matt's a super nice guy, and he knows what he's talking about. He's been trapping a long time, and we're going to kind of cover his past and his current season this year. So we'll be talking about that, and also jumping back and forth, talking about the muskrats that we've been trapping here the past few days. So it was a good trip, so stick around for that. Before we begin, we definitely got to give it up for the sponsors. J3O.com, that's for J3 Outdoors. Check them out. They have, they're the makers of the Hags bracket, the spring clip, what else? The tail hook for muskrat skinning. I really love the multi-purpose, multi-lock tool that they have there. Check them out at j3o.com. Look at all their products there. Quality made, American-made stuff there by Jeff Haggerty. Check it out. Also got to give it up for Top Lot Stretcher Company. Their website is toplotstretcherco.com. They carry a full line of trapping products, along with some really quality adjustable stretching boards that we're big fans of. So they did a good job with that design, and highly recommend them. So toplotstretcherco.com. Check them out. And also HoosierTrapperSupply.com. Jump on our website. Check it out. We have anything and everything you need to get started. And of course, home of the famous top dog predator bait. You name it, we got it. If we don't have it, we'll find it. Or at least Charlie will try to find it. Put it that way. But, I got a few more things I want to mention. Some of you know and some of you don't. I started a Facebook group page called The Catch Circle. It's for anyone and everyone that wants to learn or know about or find some sort of trapping community. That's what it is, and that's all it's going to be. So if it's not trapping related, it's going to get deleted off there. So ask questions, share your stories, advertise your products. It doesn't have to be necessarily connected to Hoosier Trapper Supply. It's for anyone that wants, if it's trapping, you're good and golden. Sell your traps on there. It doesn't matter. It's a community for all of us to hang out and socialize on. So let's make it a fun place. So jump on there. We're getting close to 5,000 people. Not quite, but it's a good group so far. I share a lot of stuff on there. Also, speaking of view count and numbers and subscribers and all that, make sure you subscribe on Hoosier Trapper Outdoors on our YouTube page. We need all the help we can get. Once we hit the 10,000 mark, I'm going to release a Trap House Podcast t-shirt design that will be available. So I'm kind of waiting for that 10,000 subscriber mark for Hoosier Trapper Outdoors, and we'll go ahead and release them then. So make sure you do that, and I hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us. All right, we're doing a little muskrat trapping here in Indiana. Charlie and I, and also we got our good buddy Matt with us, Matt Bredeweg. He's letting us keep a refrigerator or freezer at his place, and kind of giving us a home base to work out of. If we got issues, we can lean on him a little bit. He's a local trapper in this area that knows a thing or two, I should say. Matt, we normally start all these with some sort of little brief bio or something, if you don't mind. Telling us how you got into trapping.
A little brief bio. Well, I was a kid, I don't know, 11 or 12. I was hanging out at a buddy's house for the weekend, how you typically do. His dad came in and said, "Hey, you boys want to go with me to a trapping convention?" And me, I looked wide-eyed and I said, "Yeah, I'd like to go." And my buddy, he wasn't very keen on it, but since I wanted to go, he said, "All right." So we went and had a great time. The old man, his name was Carol Stoner, and he's was inducted into the Hall of Fame a few years ago. So Carol looked at me at the end of the weekend, and he could tell, man, this kid's really interested in this. So he gave me 6 110s to kind of get me started. And heck, I've been pretty much hooked ever since. After high school and college and all that, I really started trapping pretty hard, and with the rats and coons and beavers and coyotes, just a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So
everything that Indiana offers here.
Yep.
Cool.
So do you remember where that convention was at that you went to, that Trappers Convention?
I do not. It seems like maybe around Odin somewhere, but I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I was just excited to go. And
what you got a rough idea what year that would have been?
Let me think. Maybe what would have been 85 or 86, maybe somewhere in there.
Okay.
So.
And he'd been a lifelong trapper.
Lifelong trapper. He trapped a lot.
And then you said he was inducted into what, the Indiana State Trappers Hall of Fame?
I believe so.
Okay. Interesting.
And you got the trapping bug, and it's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. Yeah, I trapped for, pretty hard for a lot of years. Several years ago now, I bought fur for a couple of years, and just to see what that was all about. I'm sure, Charlie, you bought fur for a number of years.
14.
I just stuck with 2 years on that. So I figured out really quick I'd rather trap than
put up fur.
Than buy fur. I don't mind putting up fur, but I'd rather trap and kind of do my own,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there were when guys complain about fur buyers, or they complain that they should be paying more.
They have no idea.
They have no idea. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So, if there's the buyer has to make money to stay in business, and if with as volatile as this fur market is, I mean, it's difficult to even keep your head above water, let alone show a profit. So
right.
Very difficult. So I think a lot of guys got a little taste of that because a lot of trappers ship to an international auction, whether it be fur harvesters or once NAFA. Of course, they're not around now, but and they got an idea of how stuff is graded, and got an idea that not everything is good that they had, so.
Right. And we see that a lot. So.
Yeah. And there's some guys that just figure if it's a raccoon, it's the raccoon, and it should be X number of dollars.
Well, yeah, this is a good raccoon.
Everyone I catch is the best. It's a top lot.
There was when I was buying fur, there was always a couple lines. It's like, well, they don't use the belly, and this isn't what Fur Fish and Game says it's worth. And it's like, well, sell it to Fur Fish and Game, and they do use the belly, by the way. So
exactly.
That's funny. So we've been, Charlie and I have been hard at it here past few days, muskrat trapping. Short, quick trip. Put together a few episodes for Hoosier Trapper Outdoors tomorrow. We're going to check.
It's just 2 check day trips. So yeah,
real quick, in and out sort of deal. It's during the work week, but put a couple episodes together and get out, catch some rats, and head home. Hopefully tomorrow it's not raining too much and we can stay on top of them. I don't know. What do you think, Charlie?
I hope so. Hope it's not raining that much. So.
We're working out of kayaks. It'd be nice if we had, set up a canoe, some sort. That might be in the future, but right now this is all we have. In fact, Charlie's kayak is actually Jake's kayak.
Yeah.
He's letting you borrow.
Yeah.
But we're getting the job done, and it's been a blast so far.
And I will say, didn't mean to cut you off, but the canoe, that is a nice way to trap rats, especially where you guys are trapping. I know when I trapped out there, two of us, one guy would kind of position the canoe, and the other guy could then, kind of lean over the bow or whatever and punch in a couple sets on the hut or on the slides or whatever, and that was pretty effective, and it went pretty quick.
Right. See, that was kind of our deal is, kayak, you can only carry a limited amount of equipment with you. And
you're positioning and trying to set.
Right.
And when the wind's blowing,
it's
that's hard to do.
It's a pain, yeah. So your idea of the kayak or the canoe makes a lot more sense, really.
Yeah.
But, the kayaks are fun, but if you're trying to be proficient and efficient and whatever, so.
Right.
I mean, it has advantages, like as far as me and you could split up and cover more.
Right.
But it's really hard to do if we're trying to film a show. So canoe's the way to do it.
And your fiberglass poles are how long that you're using?
We're using 6-footers.
6-footers.
But I'll tell you, I think that if you had 7 or 8, it would be even better.
Yeah, we had talked earlier, and the poles that we were using were 7 foot.
Mm-hmm.
We had a few fiberglass poles, but we used a lot of bamboo, and that seemed to work really well.
Was that bamboo that you'd cut down here locally? Or?
Yeah. So,
did you have trouble seeing those, or did you guys tie flagging on them?
No, duct tape.
On them, okay.
We used either pink or orange. Cut it about a foot long, and then fold it back onto itself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
As you wrap it around the pole.
Yeah.
It's highly visible, and also it kind of serves another purpose. If by chance a hawk or an owl or something flies along in the night and sees that rat there, and they grab it and they go to fly off with it, that duct tape will kind of help
Hold
Keeps
it
the
down.
trap from going over the
keep
top.
that trap from going over the
end there.
the end of the pole.
Yeah.
So and that does kind of help, and it happens from time to time. So you might get home and realize that some of your rats have 3 puncture wounds in their back.
From the raptors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which happens, in this area quite a bit.
Yeah. We had we put orange tape on the top of our 6-foot poles. But the last time we were here was 2 years ago, and we had to be an owl or a hawk that pulled one literally over the top, but evidently it couldn't go much further with it or something, but it was laying there, but it was like, it looked like a mink had gotten hold of it, but a mink wouldn't have got it over the top of the stake,
Right.
know, so. But
Right. And have you guys caught any mink out here yet?
we have not.
No?
Mm-mm.
There are several in this area, so.
You guys catch them on the rat huts then too?
Yep. From time to time.
Now, when we saw a couple rat huts that had fish laying on top of them that had been partially eaten. I don't think it was an otter.
Probably not. Probably could have been an osprey.
Okay. I wonder if it was some sort of bird, or maybe a mink did it. I don't know, but
Well, it could be either.
yeah.
Yeah, I think we only had one and maybe 2 where it looked like something was, ripped apart on top of a hut. But other than that, everything's been pretty clear. Nothing crazy.
Yeah.
So Matt, when did you start off as a water trapper then, raccoon and muskrat primarily?
Primarily,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And a good friend of mine, my trapping buddy that I trap a lot with, he kind of got me going on the beaver, catching beaver on different farm ponds and lakes around.
Mm-hmm.
So we started catching a few of them, and but mostly, when I was young, it was raccoons and muskrats.
So then, when did you get into coyote trapping?
Oh, I was in high school. I caught a few,
Mm-hmm.
but it was nothing serious. I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time there was a dead deer close to the house, and we drug it back in the pasture, and I didn't really know anything about it. I just set footholds on the ground right around the carcass, and had logs tied to the or wired to the traps and the log. And I remember it snowed a lot, and I went out there to check my traps, and I'd caught my first coyote.
Mm-hmm.
Dumb luck. I know it was. I thought looking back, there's no way I'd ever do that or recommend that to catch a coyote. But I don't know. It seems like I got more interested in the coyote trapping and really kind of started pursuing them a lot more than the last, 15 years or so.
So who did you look up, or did you use for gaining information? Anybody in particular, or just general, or?
Oh, a lot of fur fishing game.
Yeah.
Read a lot of articles. I went to different conventions and watched other guys and kind of looked to see what they were doing. Started implementing that myself, and I started catching a few more coyotes.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the internet, you learn a little bit more. You kind of take the good and the bad, and you kind of try to figure it out what works for you the best.
Mm-hmm.
And with all that, you become a little bit more successful, and then you can start catching a few more, and
yeah.
So that's just kind of how I evolved.
Yeah.
To what I am now, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'd say you got it figured out, and at this point, it's just, I think it just becomes maybe some refinement, maybe, or you hear something that maybe you hadn't thought of before. But I mean, generally, once you get to a certain point, it's just kind of, you've pretty much got it.
You become comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You know what works for you,
mm-hmm.
And then it's just repeat.
Yeah.
Do it again.
Yeah.
And just don't try to reinvent the wheel. Just, what works, just do that.
So when you go set a location, I'm assuming you probably set 2 or 3 traps per location or per stop.
Yeah.
And
every time I stop to make a set, I at least put in 2, maybe 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
I try to, you try to want to cover the wind, whichever way the wind might be blowing at any given time, so you have that particular creek crossing or field crossing or whatever it may be, you got it covered.
Right. Do you normally straight up all dirt holes, or are you mixing flat sets in with that, or?
Really, I do mostly dirt holes.
Yeah.
If I have a good spot that I like for a flat set, I'll use a flat set. If I've got a rock by a crossing or something, I do like to use a glandler and a urine, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of go with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do use a lot of dirt holes on my line.
Yeah, we do too. I think guys get real hung up on what set to use, and probably make it more complicated than they should, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
when you move into the this time of the year, the flat sets may be more appropriate. But I mean, we always put a few in early as a territorial type thing, like you said, with glandler and urine or whatever. But or in the case that you got a bunch of rain and you want to dig dirt holes, then sometimes flat set works.
Sure, right.
So, but there's nothing. I mean, there's a number of times that we'll basically dig somewhat of a hole, put the bait in there, kind of fill it back in, put a rock on top of it, and then make a hybrid flat set right off that rock too. So you got.
It's funny you mentioned that. When I went out to Nebraska, I told the guy out there I was going to catch a coyote off this certain rock, and he kind of looked at me and it's like, dude, you're not going to catch one off that rock. And I never caught one out there off that rock. But guess what? I brought that rock home.
Have you caught one off of it here?
Since then, I sent him pictures. Even this year, I caught another one off that same rock.
That's funny.
So it's kind of a conversation piece, I'll say, well, I'm going to catch one off the Nebraska rock again this year. So
what was the deal out there?
Just
just coincidental circumstances, or
I just kind of wanted something that stuck out on that particular location that we were on. And, like, hey, I got this ruck I picked up in the truck. I was wanting to use it. Great looking spot, just never caught a coyote. So I brought it home and put it in an area I knew was a good spot and caught a coyote off of it.
There's guys that'll take something odd too. I mean, rock would be pretty natural, but they'll say small pumpkins, or they'll just take something just odd and set it out in a field as this curiosity attractant for a coyote. Most of us don't haul that stuff around, and it's generally not necessary to do that, but you can do that.
Right. And I've used chunks of burnt firewood out in a wide open field.
Yeah.
It's just something different that
Stands
it wasn't
out.
there yesterday, and it stands out. I've used a small like a deer skull with maybe a one antlered buck or whatever. I might not have the trap right there, but might squirt some urine on it and put a flat set in close by, and it's been productive for me.
Yeah. There was you talked about the dead deer and setting up on it. I think those big bait stations like that, if you're downwind from them, 10 to 20, maybe 30 yards off, I think that's probably the way to set those up with a mixture of sets or flat sets or whatever, but just, obviously setting up on a big carcass is, you catch everything.
Not
but,
exactly ideal.
Yeah.
You'll catch every possum within 20 miles probably.
And probably every raptor, and, so.
Exactly.
Some guys tell me that they're doing that, and it's like, yeah, man. Nothing wrong with that thing putting in a thicket, though, and setting snares around it, too, after time goes by. But,
Right.
So. You do any snaring?
A little bit, not a lot. Where I'm at, where I do snare, it's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So those are my locations where I'll, use some snares. I might have had 4 or 5 different farms this year where I put some snares. And this was such a wet year. I had more problems than ever with my snares, and I ended up pulling the rest of them. I actually had earth anchors and that were pulled out of the ground.
Really?
Yes.
That were on snares?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Setting great trails, and man, I thought it was a fluke. And the guys that are with me and riding along, and they said, "Well, we can't find this thing anywhere." And I said, "Well, I'll come over there in a minute, and I'll show you where it's at." Well, I went over there, and I couldn't find it. It was gone. We found where it had been pulled out of the ground. So after that, it was, we tripped them, and later on, I pulled them all out of the ground, and it was, you could pull them out by hand.
Really? Just because that ground is so saturated?
The ground is so saturated, and even now, just a couple weeks ago, I was checking traps. Great big catch circle, and we had just got a rain. Trap was gone, coyote was gone, and it just pulled the earth anchor and everything up out of the ground.
Yeah.
And that's I hate that.
Yeah.
I absolutely hate to lose an animal. So
Yeah. Yeah, when the conditions get like that, and then of course a snare, you got all 4 legs working.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a horse on a horse collar, essentially, in a way. But
right.
Of course, but a lot of times when we get in situations where we feel like we may have an issue, we'll double stake with cable stakes, which I'm sure you do too. But once in a while, just
when it got to that point, once I realized what had happened, I just didn't want to risk it. I pulled them.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah.
So, and after I lost the one in the foothold, I tripped my traps, and I pulled all them up too. And of course, looking out the truck window now. They're all sitting over there by the barn. So
See that?
So I'm going to let it dry out before I kind of get back at it.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to get cool off and get quite a bit colder for next week. So, but,
which cold weather I like.
Yeah,
but this wet stuff, I don't care much for that.
Yeah, it's like 55 degrees today, and we just got done with 5 inches of rain or whatever it was,
right.
3 or 4 days ago, and that's
miserable.
Yeah, very difficult to trap in that. So, so are you a wax dirt guy, peat moss guy, cover holes guy, or dry dirt?
Yes. Everything except the cover holes. This year, I went to more wax sand.
Okay.
Had really good luck with it. Before that, it was wax dirt. Before that, it was peat moss. Peat moss is definitely lighter. Seems like I had some refusals, I guess, with the peat moss. It just maybe it just didn't look right. But with the wax sand, for me, it's worked really well. And with everything I've done, I try to top coat it with whatever's naturally there, if that makes sense, to try to blend it all back in, and it's worked good for me.
The sand obviously would be. Are you mixing any dirt in with that at all, or is it straight up sand?
Straight sand.
So what's your wax ratio on that then?
Oh gosh, Charlie, I have no idea. I just kind of mixed it in there till it looked right.
Okay.
Until it looked wet,
okay.
I guess.
Okay.
Looked like wet sand, and that's kind of what I went with.
So how were you doing that over a burner then, or?
Nope, I did it in the
sun. Okay.
Summertime.
When you're supposed to do it, when most of us
when
never
it was
seem to get
so
it done.
hot, I didn't want to be outside. That's when I was doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's that idea, that preseason prep that we should be doing that most of us don't get done, so but
right, yeah. And this year I wanted to take the time and do that, and I think we had 1 week where it was extremely hot.
Yeah, unbearable.
And that is the week that I did it.
Yeah.
So it just happened to work out.
Now, did you put plastic on top of that too, or did you just straight up in the sun?
I had got my 12-foot trailer out. I put black plastic on it, and I put the sand on there, and then the wax on top. And after about half hour, I mixed it all in, and then just kind of checked it. And if it needed a little bit more, I added a little bit more. And if not, I put it in buckets and
good to go.
Put it in the barn. Yeah.
Now, did you have a natural sanding place to get sand, or did you have to buy it? Or
well, I was talking to one of the guys I trap on. He said, "Hey, we just dipped out one of our ditches. It's nothing but sand." I said, "Well, I'll go check it out," and it's perfect.
That is perfect.
And right next to the road, or his farm lane or whatever. So I backed the trailer in there and loaded it up and came home with it.
Yeah,
can't beat that.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
I had a friend of mine, E.J. Kelly. He's from was from Iowa, northwestern Iowa. Now he lives in Wyoming, but he's from the Trappers College, and he had made wax dirt. He was big on making wax dirt every summer, and he made some right after they got done spraying anhydrous. And he just wasn't thinking, and it
how'd that turn out?
It didn't turn out good. Because nothing smelled like anhydrous when it came time to use it. So, and
that could be problematic.
Yeah, and then he made a lot of wax dirt, but he also tried the cement mixer burners. I don't know if you've seen that method.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And that's fine, but he said that he had done something similar to that, and it had dry vegetation in that, and actually burnt that vegetation. So he had that burnt smell on the top of the trap, which was a good attractant, but it was too much of an attractant because they kept wanting to dig up the trap. So he had some issues with that too. I mean, it's the kind of the stuff that you run into when you're making wax dirt. But anyways, there's.
That's crazy. So back to muskrats. While we're Charlie, you want to give us a rundown? What do we? Like I said, we're on our kayaks. We did.
How did you guys do today?
Yeah. How did we do?
We did
58 rats.
58 rats out of 118 sets, so we were one shy of 50%, which I thought was pretty good. So I don't know what you guys.
That's not too bad.
Yeah,
Matt's usually around 100%.
but
No, I am not. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not. So we can just kind of keep it real,
yeah,
But that's not bad. And tomorrow numbers will probably drop a little bit.
yeah. I'm assuming I'm thinking we're probably 25-30% tomorrow, but would be my guess if I had to venture to say, but maybe not.
I know we could
Maybe.
do better and set more and all that, but man,
It's
that's
tough.
a lot of work.
I know
That's the
where
most
you guys.
work I've ever put in.
I know where you guys are trapping, and it's tough. It is. It's tough out there.
What did I say on that tracker? About 4 miles or so.
Well, we were but it didn't count that one part. So we were probably just under 5 miles of paddling. So with no current to help us out, or and some wind.
Well, I will say, we didn't paddle the whole time. When we had a 50-pound thrust trolling motor on our canoe.
Oh, okay.
So
I see what's going on here.
So getting out there, at the back of that place, we used trolling motor,
Mm-hmm.
and coming back in, we used trolling motor. But as we're going from hut to hut or whatever,
Right.
we're paddling.
Yeah. I had said something to Justin about that. We need some sort of trolling motor or something it would just make it so much easier. I'm assuming if the electric, there would be no issues with that at all. So,
No,
but,
that's works pretty good.
yeah. So
I'm
Yeah.
sure it'd be better, if it could, drive your truck right up to the spot or whatever, and like they do out west, and put some culvert or some colonies in the culverts or
Yeah.
whatever. That'd be nice.
yeah, or drop off 2 or 3 floats and just move to the next spot. Put
Yeah.
in 2 or 3 floats, and yeah.
What about Charlie? Why don't you invest in one of those ATVs that all of a sudden turn into a jet ski as you're driving? We can make it real serious there.
Yeah.
Muskrat trapping off of a jet ski. That might be interesting. Right
That
there.
sounds like a million hits on YouTube for sure. We're going viral. Oh, man. But we've had a good time. Majority of our sets have been on the side of huts and feeder beds and things like that, just looking for sign for fresh vegetation that's been chewed up on, and some droppings, things like that. Some spots look really good and some not so much. I feel like we put in 2 different spots, and I feel like the spot that we put in looked better. The first spot we put in looked better than the second, but the catch ratio is actually switched or flopped. We did better in the spot that didn't look
What we thought is looked, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could definitely tell there's sign at every location, but as far as the amount or how fresh, that kind of surprised me a little bit. But that's part of it.
Yeah. So Matt, how'd you learn to put up fur?
trial and error.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Of course, go to the conventions and you watch other guys and you read up on it, but until you do it yourself, you're not gonna get any better.
Right.
So a lot of years before I started putting up fur, I'd just sell it to the fur buyer. Well, then I'd watch his guys work and think to myself, I can do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started messing around with it, and every year you do a little bit more, and you get a little bit better, and you learn things along the way, and and I've got a 8x16 fur room. I've got a dehumidifier and fans, and I've got my flesh and beam in there, and that's I've progressed to that, I guess.
Yeah.
And I can, have a muskrat skinned and dried in just a couple days. He's ready to put on the hanger.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The question we get often is, well, on a coon, well, how do you know when you got all the fat off? Or it's just when you get to the skin, it's just hard. You just got to do it.
Right.
And then you get the feel for it. And then once you put that coon on the stretcher and it starts drying, it will immediately tell you where you need to flesh more.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
But then there's a time where some of that's okay. You can leave some of that on there.
Right, because some of that will render off. And,
sure.
And so.
But that's just through doing it over and over and
right.
putting some years underneath your belt to learn how to do that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I got one guy that sticks in my mind, and he had never put up fur, and he brought fur in to drop off for NAFA, and that stuff. I asked him. He said that he did it himself, and he was kind of that craftsman type person, and it looked like somebody that had been putting up fur for 10 years and was the best there was. I never saw anything like it. Just one of them people that was a natural, but he was the rare exception.
Yeah, some guys have a knack for it, but then there's others that need a lot of practice.
Yeah, and they never learn.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that, actually, that need to learn. I struggle on coons, especially first getting going. And Charlie talks about that when you first put it up, let the air hit it for a little bit, then it starts showing where you should have been scraping a little bit better. And that hold true for me on coons for sure.
Now, when you were buying, were you running that 18-hour shift out there putting up fur?
No. I'd probably work out there till 11 or 11:30 at night, just trying to get caught up.
Mm-hmm.
But I was small time.
Yeah.
I didn't buy a lot. I didn't want to be that busy.
Yeah.
Of course, I like to trap, so.
Right.
But it gave me a better understanding for some of these bigger fur buyers, what they see, what they're dealing with when people bring in fur.
Right.
So I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
So I got to see a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. The when I first started buying, I was just a kid, basically 18 years old, still and these guys would show up and would figure they got some young kid here that doesn't know anything, and I didn't. You just kind of learn by trial and error fairly quickly. So a lot of it's just dealing with who you're selling it, who's selling you fur too. So,
sure.
What they're if they're trying to get something over on you, if they're just offering you fur to sell you fur. So, but it takes. I bought during the very beginning of the fur boom years and through the fur boom years, and then after the fur boom years, which I've talked about this before, but it just got to the point where nobody would bring anything in for what the market was. Since then, people have gotten used to it. It was so good for so long, and nobody ever thought it would go away. Well, it did go away. So of course, right now we're not in very good times either.
Right.
Fur price wise.
Right.
So, but we're still out here trapping. So.
Well, of course we enjoy it.
Yeah.
We like to do it.
Yeah. Then that's, people ask why, and it's like, can't really fully explain that, but it's just what you enjoy doing. It's just,
Right. And there's something, to be said about that. And I'm sure you guys probably get phone calls all the time, like, hey, I'd like to deer hunt on this piece of property, and I got my deer this year. Are you guys interested in catching any coyotes?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll come out and try to catch some. And I get those phone calls, and I'm sure you guys do too.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll get them. Well, if you can wait till after deer season, my wife hasn't killed her buck yet.
Right. Yeah, that's the standard line. Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just got more acres to trap.
Right.
So.
Right.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So, and I know around here, you can catch a lot of coyotes, and in this county in particular, we're getting a lot of bobcats now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was running about, catching 3 or 4 coyotes to a bobcat.
Yeah, which is crazy.
For this area, yeah.
And for those of you that are listening out of state, we do not have a bobcat season in Indiana as we speak. So
Right. So when we catch them, we got to turn them loose.
Yeah. Matt's on Facebook, so probably some of you guys saw his post with his triple on bobcats.
Triple.
That was crazy. Pouring down. It's raining, right?
It was a light rain. We were driving up to these sets and kind of coming around a curve, and as I'm driving, I holler at my buddy. I said, "Hey, Steve," I said, look up there. There's a bobcat. It was running up on top of the hill, and we got to see it for a couple seconds. Man, that's cool. We got to see a cat. I mean, that's pretty neat. We get around the corner, and we see a cat, and we got it caught. And then there's another one, and we finished the corner, and there's the third one. So we had.
Oh my gosh.
We only had 3 traps at that location.
If you had 4, you would have 4 cats.
It's a good possibility.
Most likely,
because it was there.
Yeah.
So.
That's crazy.
That's the craziest cat story I guess I have. But so far this year, we've caught 11. So
in a state that doesn't have a season,
right?
Which is crazy. So
and in one county.
Yeah.
So
and other trappers are catching them too.
Oh yeah, I had a young guy just this week. He was trapping a couple miles north of me. About the same time. This has been about a month ago, maybe. I can't remember the dates. He was actually trapping just to the north of me, and he caught 2 bobcats.
Yeah.
So, and then I know another guy, he said, hey, one just got hit on the road and same kind of area. And I had a guy talk to me. He'd caught 6 so far this year, and all in this same area.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. We had talked earlier, and I had mentioned that I had heard from a biologist, and they had said that they weren't there. There was theory, there was no proof of this, about this idea that the bobcats just kind of set up their own territory as the dominant predator in the area, and they kind of push the coyotes out. And like I said, this was an idea,
Well, that's interesting because that farm where we had the triple on the cats, we did not catch a coyote there this year. And the year prior, I'd caught 7 or 8 coyotes just from the one location where I caught the cats. And then, that now that you mention that, even some of the other farms where we'd caught cats, we didn't catch coyotes. So there could be
kind
something.
of lines up with yours.
Could be something to that.
It'd be interesting to see how that holds, since you're in a county that's so populated with bobcats, to see how that holds over the years, if that remains to be the case.
I'll have to keep an eye on that, yeah.
Because I guess you could say, but that sounds more than coincidental chance right there. It just sounds like there's something to that idea.
Well, even the landowner said, well, how many coyotes did you catch out there? And I said, I didn't catch any this year right there.
Yeah.
We had the cats. We'd caught, of course, you can catch raccoons and possums everywhere.
Right.
But no coyotes.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I mean, it's possible they got parvo and died or whatever, but probably not. So
probably not in that area. I'm still kind of taken back that we didn't catch any coyotes there.
Especially since a year ago was so good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And the years past.
Right.
It's been one of them places where you go and you're going to catch 5 or 6 coyotes.
Yeah.
You just you're going to catch them.
Yeah. You just count on it. We had a spot a year ago. We caught 2 years ago. We caught 5 there. Last year we caught 7 there. This is just one little crossing. And then this year, we catch 4, 3. It was the lightest year yet. It was just but it wasn't because of bobcats. It was just circumstances, I think. But
right.
But when we were there, but really has nothing to do with the bobcats. But my craziest bobcat story was we were in Kansas. Jake was with me. He was young, and we'd set one day. We got 36 traps in the ground, and we did. And typically in Kansas, we always caught a ton of possums and skunks. It was not even out in the middle of the nowhere, you'd catch a possum.
Sure.
It was strange.
And a perfect coyote set, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It happens.
give you an idea, one year we caught 27 possums in one day. I mean, can you imagine what
That's
that was?
phenomenal.
Yeah.
You're going for numbers.
Yeah, yeah. So, the possums were beating the bobcats to the set for sure. But anyways, we had 36 traps in the ground. We did not catch a possum, a skunk, nothing. I mean, it was like the Dead Sea. And we got to the very last 2 traps, and they were just within 25 yards of each other, but it was around the bend. So the first one's got a cat in it. We went around the bend, and there's another cat. The last 2 traps of.
The rest of the day was blank.
Yeah. Blank.
Jeez.
I mean.
Well, you end on a high note, that's
yeah,
for sure.
That's my
good.
crazy bobcat story. It's not a triple, but it was just the whole.
good, yeah.
It was just the whole. Not catching anything. It was just so odd. Not that we were upset that we weren't catching possums or skunks, but
Right.
it was just weird.
Right.
There's some nights that animals don't move at all, and you just don't. It's just like it's a way off night. It's just nothing happens. But it kind of threw that theory in the aside when we get to the last 2, and there's 2 bobcats there, But anyways,
Yep.
that was a deal where through a friend we had lined up this land in Kansas, and through a guy that outfitted bird hunters, primarily turkey hunters in the spring, and then upland hunters in the fall and winter, and then he ran some deer hunters too. But so he was wanting anything that would eat a bird egg caught. Yeah,
Right.
So he got us a ton of ground. It was a good deal. It was we never quite covered everything that he had, so made it nice. But so Matt, you trapped in Nebraska.
Yep. Beatrice, Nebraska.
Okay.
Yep.
What part of the state? I know the name.
South of Lincoln, about 45 minutes.
Okay.
So, give you an idea.
Yeah.
And we trapped from there to the southern part of the state.
Okay.
So
All land, I'm assuming. Land trapping?
yeah.
Or- okay.
Mostly, coyotes, cats, red fox, that sort of thing. So.
Was that your first out-of-state experience then?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And I've been back there 3 times.
So it was
and
good to go back.
It was good to go back. And interestingly enough, there was a guy on Trapper Man. He said he's looking for an out-of-state guy that would trap with him for 2 weeks. He traps pretty hard, and if anybody's interested, get with him. And
Why did it have to be an out-of-state guy? He didn't want to teach the locals his ways? One of those?
Well, I don't think it was that. I kind of who's up for a new experience,
Yeah, just
and,
presenting an opportunity.
give somebody an opportunity. And I thought, that's something I always wanted to do. And so I messaged him. So we got to talking, and he looked me up on my Facebook profile and all that. And I checked him out too, because you never know who you're.
Exactly. Exactly.
Guy could have been a serial killer or whatever.
Yeah.
So we talked a few times, and you going out of state, you think, well, maybe I need to have a plan B, just in case. Nicest guy you ever run into.
Yeah.
Super. Caught my first bobcat out there, and then I caught another one.
You brought him back here, didn't you?
Brought him back home. So had a great time. And I've caught red fox beautiful red fox, coyotes, bobcats, badgers, all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, and being here in Indiana, we don't have badgers, and
Right.
we don't have very many red fox. We can't keep any cats.
Right.
So that was awesome.
Yeah. And a pretty nice coyote out there compared to here.
Yeah. And the raccoons are
Beautiful.
very nice.
Yeah.
So, and of course we caught, a million possums. So
Yeah.
it was kind of neat, kind of fun time.
For those that are new to all of this, the section that you catch stuff in, as far as fur quality, is amazing. Time of year, but it is always important. You always want to catch fur when it's prime, fully prime, especially in a market like we have now. But then you've got to factor in the part of the country that you're in, because some areas are so much better than others, and it can even be 2 hours apart. But of course,
which is weird to me.
Of course, Nebraska is way more than 2 hours. But that is when we trapped Kansas, they had a beautiful coon. It was straight hair, not kinky, and the color was right. Ours are very dark tips a lot of times, and theirs have got that silver mixed in, and just,
Unless you've seen fur from a different region, it's hard to kind of comprehend that.
Right.
But you look at an Indiana coyote versus a Nebraska coyote.
Oh yeah,
There's
blow you away.
A world of difference.
Yeah.
It's like a different animal.
And then if you ever got to see an Alberta coyote,
oh my gosh,
it doesn't even look the same.
and they feel soft like a fox almost.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have that real coarse. Of course, no harsh colors like we have here.
Right.
I put on Facebook and Instagram last year a coyote that we had caught in New Mexico, and then a coyote that was from Indiana. And they were both of good quality, but it was like genetically a different species almost. It didn't even look the same, So
I caught a coyote this year, and looking back, it was a coyote. And Steve was with me, and I had caught two. It was a double. The first one definitely a coyote. Typical colors. We dispatched it, went to the next one because they were about 40 yards apart. We got up to it. I looked at Steve, said, "Bud, I don't know. It's got yellow eyes. It's acting like a coyote. Boy, it just doesn't look like a coyote. I mean, it was red with had a white belly, and I'm thinking this isn't a coyote." I got my catch pole. I got his foot out of the trap, and I'm looking at it, and Steve looked at me, and he goes, "I don't know." I said, "I think it's a coyote, but I'm going to turn it loose." And I turned it loose. And as it ran off, guess what?
It was a coyote.
It was a coyote. Because it ran just like a coyote, and he didn't look back.
Yeah.
If it was a dog, you would think that,
right.
No, it was a coyote.
It just was.
So I've
Crossed up with something.
And of course, it was a female too. So I've just released that gene pool right back into the mix. So I did not do any favors for the population around here. I did turn one loose.
The local coyotes.
So that's one on myself. But you look at one of these things and there's no way that's a coyote. And you watch it run off, and it was a coyote.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny, we were talking about regions of fur and how 2 hours apart, like you mentioned. You were telling that one story one time, and it still just blows my mind. When you were buying fur, and you were actually selective on which counties, because you knew this county had a better silver-tip coon versus some of the junk around Homer.
It was more that when I was buying fur, that I would run to different towns and buy locally. I'd advertise that I was going to be in a spot, and I'd buy fur. Well, there was one in particular, I won't say exactly where, but it was in southern Indiana, and I bought a lot of fur there. I mean, it was nothing to go there and buy 150 coon in an evening and maybe a couple hundred rats and whatever coyotes and foxes that would go along with that. But those coon were so poor, kinky-haired, yellow coon, that I actually, after 2 seasons, I stopped that stop just because it was just...
That's so weird.
Were you here in Linton?
No.
Okay.
Maybe I could have been. I don't know. No, I wasn't in Linton. But it was east of here. But that was just it just was, and part of the problem was that I was buying so many there. Say you go down there a month and you bought 500 coons. Well, that's 500 coons you got mixed in with your others that don't look so good. So, I mean, it's all by the grade, but the way during those years, I mean, coon, you had to pay for coon. So
sure,
it was like you couldn't get away with paying less in that section than you could 100 miles down the road or even whatever. But anyways, I dropped the stop because I couldn't, the quality was terrible.
Yep.
It was just that
just that little region right there. Where,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And that area, those guys beat the bushes. It was just, of course, that was during those fur boom years, and those guys were out after that stuff, And you get more urban counties, and it would be less like that. But you get in those more rural counties, and guys were after that stuff, So there was not too many rocks that didn't go unturned looking for coons or whatever.
Right.
Or den trees that were cut or whatever.
Man.
That was some crazy times back then. I'll tell you what.
Well, you got any other crazy stories, Charlie?
I don't think I can top Matt turning that coyote loose.
Yeah, that's not one of my finer moments.
Do you want me to cut that out, and we shouldn't tell people you turned the coyote loose?
Well, I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
I see these guys posting on Facebook, and they'll post those ones that got the black face, and then they got that like white above their eyes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
white fur on their eyes.
He
and
just caught a husky.
And they're all proud of this coyote. Well, yeah, it was probably was, but it had so much domestic dog background in it somewhere in the gene pool that it was like, I don't know that you should really be that super proud of that.
Right.
You should be proud that you got it out of the gene pool.
Yeah, and that's what I failed to do.
You did the opposite. Oh,
Well,
man.
you're a conscientious trapper.
Well, I
Let's put it that way.
guess, and maybe next year I'll have to hit that farm again. And
You probably have to catch that one in a snare.
yeah, well, I can't at that farm, but I know another way or two to lure them in. So. They're a coyote; they can be caught.
Oh yeah, well, and they got a year to forget about it too.
Oh, yeah.
So I read something fairly legitimate source that a dog only has so many seconds of memory. But it would have to be outside of their what they're habitually used to doing. So if it's something that's out of the ordinary, and they see it or whatever, 20 seconds later they have no memory of it. If it's not within their normal routine.
That's interesting. I've never heard that.
Yeah. So
I don't know about that one.
yeah,
That one seems
that
strange.
one I brought it up partly because I hadn't got it out of my mind completely because it just seems odd. But the dog isn't, I don't know. So, so I guess I'm giving the coyote.
You're giving the coyote the benefit of the doubt.
That's right. I'm giving him a year to forget.
Yep.
So I do wonder when guys say, "Oh, I change my bait and lure up every year because I know they remember from a year ago," and I don't really buy that personally. But within the season, I think it's a good idea. But a whole year goes by, you got a whole other group of pups.
I don't know. I don't know if I buy that or not because, the ones that are working my sets, if I've got traps in the ground, I'm going to catch them.
Right.
If I don't have traps in the ground, they're not going to associate that with anything bad because
Right.
my trap's not there.
Right. And there's only just a very small percentage that you may pinch to get away. Very
Right.
small percentage. I mean, in the scheme of things. So the guys that use those analogies, I've never really given much merit to, So it's kind of like trapping beavers, and you've trapped a lot of beavers, and
Yeah.
you get one or two stragglers, and that can be like
Sure. Take forever.
terrible.
Sure.
But sometimes if you pull out and leave them alone for 5 weeks, and then go back in and hit them, and then it's usually easier to get the last two or
Right.
one or whatever.
Yeah.
So
And that's I found that to be true.
mm-hmm.
So and maybe change up your methods of catching them completely. Do
Right.
something totally different, and they haven't seen that, and
Right.
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 Makes it a little easier.
Yeah. So
Hopefully we get a beaver tomorrow. We did set one hut. So
we'll see what happens. Otherwise, yeah.
all right, any concluders, Charlie?
Just appreciate Matt's hospitality.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
appreciate
no
you doing
problem.
this.
No problem.
It's kind of got this brotherhood of trappers out there. It's once you get past the initials, like, well, is he a axe murderer or not?
Right,
Once you get past that, then
Well, you never know what you're going to run into.
But
I will say in this industry there are some kooky ones.
Yeah.
But for the most part it's a good group of people, and
it's a really good group of people.
made a lot of good friends just by working through you, Charlie, so
I think there's something to be said about trappers that this is just plain hard work, trapping. And if you didn't enjoy it,
You wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
you wouldn't
Yeah.
be doing it. So, I mean, I think just the work ethic of a trapper and trap, what it takes to do this tells you a lot about a person, because it is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And, you talk about a brotherhood or whatever. I've got a lot of local guys here that, if I need help, I can call on them and they'll help me out. If, and vice versa. If they can call me, and if they've got a bobcat they've caught and they need help turning it loose, they know they can call me, and
Yeah.
I'll help them out the best I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because I think the conservation officers are getting tired of letting them loose.
they are extremely tired of the phone calls, I believe. So, everybody's looking for help, to turn them loose. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. It's time to go take a nap and maybe get a milkshake or get ready for tomorrow.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, man.
Yep. See you guys.
Bye.